Welcome to Brightly You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself inch by inch.
Hey, hey,
hey. Hey. Oh my Lord. Never ever do that again, Amy.
I threw you for a loop that time. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Tracy.
So, I have a case of the Young Comfies.
Comfies.
So in our last episode where I talked like I was a guru about like being disciplined over willpower.
Oh yeah, that was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I loved your vulnerability in that one. I didn't bring up any of my own examples and goals because I haven't done any of the exercises I pitched. I'm a consultant. That's my business. You're in the business of Amy. I'm in the business of consulting to Amy.
I like that. I can work with that.
Well, the problem with that then is, we ended the episode on determination with what do you want most in the world, in life, and why don't you have it?
Yeah.
And I pitched doing the 5 whys exercises, and then I talked all about how like it's gonna feel uncomfortable, but just do it. And then now I'm stuck with like, oh, that means you too.
And hence your uncomfies.
I have the uncomfies.
Yeah.
So fix me.
Well, no, I think it's great that you brought that up because I love the way that honestly, I love the way that our episodes typically tie together in some way or another, and sometimes even tie back to episodes way long ago. So I do love that. But one of the things that I do want to talk about today, I mean, that the episode is called Facing Your Fears, but what I really want to talk about is more that, yes, facing your fears, but also a discomfort with discomfort. And part of that, I think we're ingrained with this notion. You have to face your fears. And it's like, yeah, let's face our fears. But really, it's more just like this low level discomfort of like change or doing things differently or having a difficult conversation. Something I brought up during the self-confidence episode was I suggested choosing courage over confidence, because sometimes, confidence, it just sounds, once again, it's like I'm born with it, right?
Yeah.
But courage is something that can be built over time.
Or you do it scared, I think is what you brought up. Right?
Yeah.
Do it anyways.
Yeah. And so that also makes me want to talk about facing your fears, and not just like, do it scared. Although I do believe in that. There's so many different levels of fears. I'm almost getting off my own topic here. I truly believe like some fears don't have to be faced. Like we're born with 2 fears: fear of falling and of loud noises. I'm still afraid of falling. That's what you're born. Yeah, that's your 2.
You mean all these other fears I have were self-created?
Not necessarily self-created. They were many of them were for survival. Like as you become older, you're now like a toddler. Now you're afraid of your mom leaving the room. Well,
Amy,
that's survival.
Your fears are created for survival. Like, no, when you go back to that whole idea of what do I want most in life and why don't I have it, you are in your own way because the habits you have got you this far.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so hard to get rid of those things that may make you feel like they're tied to your survival.
Right. We're literally like, I might die if I do that. Not consciously.
Well, that's what the anxiety feels like, right? Like that's anxiety. Yeah.
Yes, that is it. So that's why also I'm like, you don't have to face every fear. Like if you never have to fly anywhere in your life and you're afraid of flying, then fine, just live with that and don't worry about it as long as it's not
Well, that's
upsetting your
it.
day to day.
That's a SWOT exercise you have to do then, right? Is like,
Yeah.
is what I'm missing out on, like what's greater, right? Like
Yes.
you have to do your own equation for that one, your own little math
Yeah.
problem for
Yeah.
that.
I'll come up with the math equation for that one. What's greater,
Well,
the fear of missing out or the fear of dying?
well,
Now,
it's not just that though, but like during my many surgeries last year, I'm allergic to most antibiotics.
yeah.
And what we have to talk about with my physician and myself is like, what would be worse, the discomfort of what I'm going to go through or the risk, right? Or not having the antibiotics and the risk of getting really sick and deathly ill, right? And some of my natural reactions to medication can kill me, right? So those ones are an immediate no, because the risk of infection is lower than immediate death. Yeah. But then a lot of the other things,
immediate death always trumps everything.
Right?
Okay.
But the physician and I, sometimes we disagree on like discomfort, like risk versus reward there, where they think that discomfort is worth it because the risk of infection is greater. Whereas I think, no, I've lived through that discomfort before and I am not doing it again. And I think that anxiety can feel the same way, right? Where you have this professional who is telling you, or another version of you that like, in order for X to happen or to ensure we're safe or to ensure we get what we want, we have to do the scary thing that is going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And anxiety is saying, no, I might die.
Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, here's something. Obviously, we do want to say, like, if you have feelings of just like fear upon fear and phobias, I mean, obviously seek professional mental health.
Yeah, we're more talking about roadblocks, right?
Yes.
And if you have something that is more like a gaping chasm, a sinkhole in your life, right? That does not feel like you could cross it yourself.
Yes.
Find support for that.
Yes. Do that. So Tracy, 2 questions. Well, 3.
Have you noticed on video I'm bracing myself?
Yeah. 3 questions, but 2 to start out with.
Okay.
Do you face your fears? And are they fears or are they that discomfort with feeling discomfort?
I just kind of feel like, let me pull out this knife I just felt like was put into my chest there.
I know.
Like everything in. So, okay. Do I face my fears? That was the first question.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them.
Okay.
And I think it goes back to that risk versus reward, right? And some of the fears.
And you have enough self-awareness to actually go through like a risk versus rewards type of thing in the moment. Sometimes. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
My most practiced sport is therapy. So yeah, I hope so. That's my biggest hobby in life, makes the dating apps real interesting, right? Like, do I put my top hobby, the thing I do the most? No, I'm a little too self-aware, but with that also means I'm hyper aware and can be hyper focused on some of my fears, right? And you can either pretend that that's not why you're avoiding things in life, right? I get anxious avoidant. So if I'm afraid of something, the biggest indicator to me is how badly am I avoiding it? How many times in my calendar planner am I writing the same stupid task that probably will take me 15 minutes to do and feel great when it's done, but I just cannot start it.
Yes.
So I get anxious avoidance with my fears, but like, I'm not going to list all my fears because I might have a nemesis that listens to the show. But some of my biggest ones is fear of embarrassment, hence the not struggling in public.
Right.
And I don't know where that comes from because embarrassment will not kill you. And most of the people that are around me when I'm getting embarrassed, A, don't notice, and B, won't recall, right? Like, and so, but that is something that because I'm self-aware, sometimes I can kind of weigh that and come up with like tips and tricks to do it. And then other times I ignore it and I just don't do the thing and I avoid the thing and I pretend I don't know why I'm avoiding the thing. And I'm just so busy and just so many other things are important. And so a lot of that is discomfort. And then some of it is like yeah, I think this would kill me if it happened. And then I had this repeating embarrassing thought in my head. Those, like, I will get those things that, like, as you're falling asleep, that thing that happened to you in 8th grade just all of a sudden plays in your head because your brain's in a great mood that day
Yeah.
out of nowhere, right? That's what I'm trying to avoid. It's both just uncomfortable to have to experience that, but then like fear of creating more of those opportunities,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And where
Yeah.
do they live? Oh,
Yeah.
this is going to be so different
Where
for
do they
everybody.
live?
I love that question. I once had a therapist that's like, and where do you feel it? And I was like, in my chest. Duh, stop asking me that. And he's like, not everybody feels it in their chest. And I was like, what? Human beings have different experiences.
Isn't that, and when I say where do they live, that is what I mean. Like, where
Yeah,
are you
where in your
feeling
body
it?
does it live?
Yes.
So for
Yes.
me, it's not quite my stomach, it's not quite my chest. I feel like it's like that diaphragm. So maybe my heart, right? Like when
Your
you think of the
solar
chakras and stuff,
plexus.
solar plexus, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't get sick to my stomach. Like I do have
Okay.
family members that like we know the things that make them uncomfortable because suddenly, they don't eat dinner when we go out in public, right? And stuff like that. So
Okay.
everybody and other people, like I will get when I'm highly anxious, when I'm doing the thing anyways, it feels, oh, what do I usually say? Oh, I'm really aware of gravity right now. Like it just feels like I think, oh, you can't see it.
Yeah.
I have a picture of him behind me, but Atlas, like it just feels like that globe on your shoulders, like weight, or like you're, walking underwater, right? Like how are you going to do anything when you're got that on you? Did I
That's,
just this? But yeah.
yeah.
So I think where does it live? That's where it lives. There's a third question. Oh, you didn't ask the third question.
No, that was the third question. Because I said, do you
Oh,
face your fears? You said yes, sometimes. And
sometimes.
then, or do you have a discomfort with feeling discomfort? I think you
Yep.
answered that. And then where do they live? Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. For me, I face some of my fears, same as you. I have a feeling that most of my fears are more that discomfort with discomfort, but it depends on what it is I'm doing. And where they live also depends on what it is I'm doing. When, like, a fear that I would have is I used to love the theater and I would always try out for plays, and more than times than not I would gain a role in a play, which is fabulous and horrifying,
I
right?
bet that's quite the
Yeah,
mix of emotions.
because then you are in front of people. And I would always, now that fear was in my stomach. That was, I'm going to throw up. That's what that fear was. But the minute I was on the stage, okay, not the minute I was on the stage, but once I was interacting with other characters, then it was gone. Then that would leave. But and that to me felt like a fear, not a discomfort. That felt like a fear. Most of my fears are in the same place as you, that solar plexus. Sometimes it's in my chest, but it lives. I feel it there, but I know it lives in my throat. And that's because it's that fear or discomfort of telling your truth,
Ooh,
of
I think it's so, as
speaking
soon as
up.
you said that, I was like, you know what? I do have some fears that live here, right? Like
Okay,
the different fears could live in different areas of
right.
your body and be
I think
experienced
they
different
do.
ways.
Yeah.
So
But
how uh can you release that, right? Like how
right. I think that's where an opportunity lies for us. If we can establish like where it is in our body, then there is a way to actually use sort of like somatic exercises and embodiment exercises to
yeah.
help release that.
So oftentimes the emotion we're avoiding, which in this case is a fear-based or anxiety-based
Mm-hmm.
emotion, we're so afraid of feeling that we kind of live in a state of that, maybe not wholly, but like we're trying so hard not to feel that way that we're actually feeling it more.
Oh
And
my
that if you
gosh.
were to actually just experience the thing or just let yourself experience the emotion just for like a minute or two, just a minute or two, it would dissipate. But so many of us fight that we end up living in like that flight, fight, freeze, fawn. Is there a fifth
Yeah.
one? In that area of life. Because when you're talking, it made me think about when you're talking about how like once you were on stage, it kind of went away, right? Like once you started interacting, once you started doing the
Yes.
thing you were
Doing the thing that
doing
you
the
were
thing.
afraid of.
Yes, it made me think about that Ben Bergeron quote we mention all the time, that happiness does not lie on the other side of achievement, right? Like it's
Yeah.
the process and the just doing the thing that brings you the happiness. And I
Yeah.
feel like for fear, it's kind of the same way. It's not that it'll go away once you complete the thing, because like what if you're writing your 50-page thesis? That could take you a year of your life, right? And who
Well,
would
and
want
what
to
if
feel
you're an
afraid for a
actor,
year?
yeah, who goes on stage continuously? Just
Right?
because you do that, it doesn't lessen the fear. Well, I take that back. It can lessen the fear. It's still there. You just understand how to navigate it
Work
better.
through it. That if you
Yes.
just get started sometimes with or you just kind of face that thing,
Yeah.
but you have to kind of like with the determination, like you have to front load, right? To
Yes.
help to hold something to hold your hand. Because you mentioned at the very start of it, facing your fears. And when people are generally talking about that, they're like a general with a rallying cry. And it's like kind of like you're picturing yourself with an army behind you and we're going to face my fears. But in actuality, it's like David versus Goliath, right? Like you are alone. And even when there are people around you, it's your fear that you're fighting, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, what,
So,
because you brought up courage earlier, right? With the
yes. And one
self-confidence.
thing I do want to state, because, so often we hear these statements, face your fears. And then after a while, it just doesn't mean anything to us anymore. But part of the solution is in the statement. You actually have to face it.
You have to do the thing.
You have to do the thing. You have to look at it and do the thing. Um, and so I feel like some of the things that I want to talk about, I do want to talk about like front loading. And I feel like we did kind of talk a little bit about what were we just like action helps, or finding out where it lives in your body, and maybe doing a movement exercise. So like with the throat chakra, or living in my throat, I'm like, okay, how do I strengthen or open up my throat chakra? And then I start to practice that. Like maybe I sing, maybe I, just holler out some empowering words. Maybe I, if it's in my solar plexus, maybe I do a deep back bend, which I can't do, but I can pretend that I can do it. So things like that. But I also want to talk about what fear feels like, what discomfort feels like.
Yeah. So part of front loading is being able to recognize your feelings
Yes.
and feel your feelings.
Feel your feelings. You don't have to live in your feelings forever if they're bad. And then some of those, I brought up courage as a way that reminded me of facing your fear. To sometimes you do have to use courage to face your fear. But I also want to talk about the aspect of faith. And by faith, it's like a general sense belief that everything is going to be okay. It might also be a spiritual faith, but what were you
Well,
going to say?
I read a book once. I know I own it somewhere. But it's all about people who have survived some
Oh,
really
yeah.
incredible things. And although we can't really speak to, and I think he covers this in the book, but you can't really speak to the general thought process of those who did not survive
Right.
similar things. But one of the things he found most consistent in the stories of these survivors was a belief that they could get through it, that this
Okay.
was going to work, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of seems like even if the people who weren't as successful had that and it didn't go their way anyways, you can look at this group and say they all had this, though it must be a component, it has to be a really important
Or
piece,
at least one, right. One of the pieces of
one
it,
of the
right?
pieces. And it's,
Yeah.
it's really easily identifiable. I have to believe I can do the thing. I have to believe that this, whatever
Mhm.
I'm afraid of, even if it happens, like you said, I'll get through it. I will survive.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that faith, um, if you have faith, like you see the opportunities instead of being in fear where you see the dangers or risks. Um, I see faith as being like, I think of when we talk about grace and ease, that's kind of what I think about with faith. Whereas fear is like, just like everything's hard and it's a shutdown and nothing is easy. I think of like trusting your decisions. With fear, it's like you can't even make a decision, right? And it tends to, fear of one thing tends to sort of radiate out into your life to other things. Whereas faith does the same thing, but in a good way, right? And I feel like um, discomfort is not quite where fear is. Discomfort, I was really reminded of discomfort when you were talking about the avoidance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, hey, look over there. Like, don't
And
look
you
at
make it
me.
worse. You're
Yeah.
compounding the fear and
Yeah.
anxiety by doing
Yeah.
that.
And it's not so much that it's not like you don't see the opportunities or you don't see the risks, but with
Sometimes you see them
discomfort,
so much, right?
you sort of ignore everything. You're like, whatever, I can't look at that, you know? And then
Oh
I
no,
think
I
that,
will full on say to myself, like, oh, Tracy, we're making some choices today, and they're not good ones. And it's why we feel this thing where we do. We still make this choice. Okay. And because I trust that when I'm ready to overcome that, right? I trust I'm not going to mess up so much, right? That like, okay, we'll avoid it a little bit longer, but then we're going to do one action, right? It's a 3-2-1 go thing I talk about all the time, right?
yeah.
Because sometimes they say like, just do the thing for 15 minutes. And if it's
I like it that you sort of negotiate with yourself.
dude, who's in charge here? Like when you say I told myself, like I just want to give that person that super Virgo organized Tracy that's like, we got to do this, we got to do this. Tracy, take the wheel, right? Like forget Jesus. There's someone in me that knows exactly what I want to do and trust that it'll be fine. But then there's this piece of me that, like you said earlier, like I just get so caught up in the emotions.
Yeah.
That I live in the emotions a little too long, right?
But I love that you just said, I know that there's someone inside of me who knows what to do,
I know
like who can do it. And so that makes me think like, I think you brought it up in determination, like the Sasha Fierce thing, like you put on a persona, right? So for me, I'm always like, what would Wonder Woman do?
Ooh,
so
yeah, add a little superhero component to it, right?
So that, but what I like about what you're saying is that there is a piece of you, not Sasha Fierce, not Wonder Woman. It's Tracy. It's Amy who knows what to do.
Because usually when it comes to like this type of fear and avoidance and things like that, there's shame and frustration there, especially once you do the thing and it was fine. Like, why didn't I do it sooner? Like, why didn't I leave this relationship? Why didn't I write this book? Why didn't I try out for the play? Right? That you're just like, God, this worked out fine. Why didn't I do it anyway? So something in you knew, and for whatever reason, you ignore it. Or you don't trust it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to, I once worked somewhere where my last day was the 1-year anniversary of my first day. And I didn't plan it that way, but it brought me joy. And what I found in working there is there were either people who lasted no more than 1.5 years, or there were people that had been there for 15 to 20 years and wouldn't leave. But we were all having the same experience. Those lifers, as we like to call them, weren't having an easier time than I was. And so there were a few of them that I talked to about it because I like career counseling. And one of them was just like, I'm really good about what I do here. Even at a similar company, I don't think it'd be as good. And I was like, you're not starting over. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. Like you didn't know all of this 15 years ago when you started. You've built this up. You will build it up again. And you don't even know like how prepared you are to be somewhere new and be a rock star there, because you're just stuck in like wanting to be the big fish in the little pond here, too afraid to like swim through the channel and see what else is out there, right? Like, but that
I feel like what you just said, we could all say to ourselves when we're facing something we don't want to do. Like you aren't starting from scratch. You're starting with experience. And we've had experiences where we have faced our fear, where we have used courage, where we've done things without being sure how they would turn out. And so we have that experience. I feel like we could just give ourselves that pep talk.
Because what I think I do when I get in like these spirals of just not doing the thing I need to do, right? Is what I'm trusting more is the experience of the times it went wrong. Or
Yes.
right?
But we do that as human beings.
Yeah. Isn't it true that like we're 10 times more likely to share a complaint about a store or an experience somewhere with a friend than we are to ever say anything about the best experience ever
Yes.
in the world? We are kind of hardwired for
And
survival.
we're
To look at it that
we're
way.
also hardwired that if 50 people say something nice about something that you did and one person says something bad, we just dwell on the bad, the one
Or
comment from the bad.
for me, it's kind of a habit because like when I think of like the thing that I'm like, Tracy, gonna do it today, I have a final project I have to work on for school. Haven't started it. I know the longer it take to start it, the more intensive and absolutely hellish experience it will be than if I had just done it according to the amazing plan I came up for it, right?
Yeah.
And I do this every single school year, every semester, every class. And so I have the experience of knowing the utmost torture of waking up every day and knowing I have this thing to do, but also knowing I'm not going to do it and having this constant discussion with myself and knowing it's never that bad when I start it, that I do come up with an idea. I do figure out the project. I do learn how to do something I've never done before. And yet when I wake up and I'm like looking at my to-do list and it's like write paper and I'm like, nope. I'm just like, why? Like the amount of anxious avoidance feelings I have today, because all week I put on my schedule Sunday where it's the end of the semester. So Sunday we're finishing everything we have to do. And I have this anxiousness in me because there's a big part of me that's like, I don't trust that you're going to do it on Sunday. And so I've been living
like, gosh,
right? Like I could have started on Wednesday. I had open time on Wednesday and I didn't do it because I'm going to do it Sunday. And so since Wednesday, I've been feeling these feelings and letting myself live in that fearful state is I'm much more likely to not do the thing on Sunday and then feel this way for another week. Right. And like, and I'm like, you should clean your house today because you got to write your paper tomorrow. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not writing my paper tomorrow. So now neither my house is clean, nor is my paper started. And it's just why I know that when I do the thing, everything else gets done. It never takes as long. I get good grades. I get good comments. There've been a few classes. I don't even think they read the damn thing. I'm just like, why I'm putting this much weight on a 2-credit course that's an elective. Like, I don't care if I get a D on the paper. Like, I'm not worried about sounding stupid. I just don't want to do the thing.
Where are you putting the weight? Is it doing the thing? Is it the thing? Is it,
so
what is it?
This particular class is something I was like, oh, I should know how to do this to advance my career. And then as soon as I started the class, I was like, oh, I never want to do this. And I don't
care. So you don't like the thing.
I don't like the thing.
Well, that makes sense.
It's a lot of my weaknesses, right? And so the whole thing is struggle bus Tracy, right? Yes. And so, I mean, how are you going to get motivated? And then also, I do have like that fear of embarrassment. It's not so much a fear of failure, but I don't want to seem dumb, right? Like, I don't, because to me, it's not even a reflection of me. Like, I want the professor to feel like I took the course seriously. I'm also paying money for this. So I'm also putting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I put a lot of pressure on me that I have to learn the thing and be the best at the thing. And this whole time I'm constantly fighting with I don't even want to do the thing, right? So for me, it's like all these different things. And so my fear right now is just, is it going to get done or not? Right. That's my true fear. Yeah. And it's just spurned by, I don't want to do the thing, but there's so many things in life we don't want to do. We have to do
but we have to do.
And
right?
then procrastination is a huge driver of fear, right? Like that has to come up in this. Yes. That the more you procrastinate, the more you get afraid.
Well, and then the harder
consequences,
the harder it gets to even start to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you put something off that you don't want to do, it gets harder and harder to even think about starting doing it. Whereas if there's something I don't want to do, now believe me, I'm a professional at procrastination. I
founding member, no.
Founding member, if it would have been founded, if there was a membership. But I also know when I want to procrastinate, and yet there's a part of me that's like, no, this is something you just have to do. I can trick myself into it. I'll trick myself into
And
it.
that's where like the Moxie episode was kind of driven.
Yeah.
Is I think with this particular project and with just how much effort it's going to take now, because I've waited till the last minute, that
Yeah.
I've been just waiting for that moment I usually get where my Moxie kicks in and I have my motivation, I have my drive, I have my brain power, and it hasn't happened. And so it's kind of like,
I think you have to trick yourself into wanting to do the thing.
I think
There
I have
has to be something to trick. I don't know. I
I
know
have
it's not.
no like the external motivators and consequences that are there.
Yeah.
There's something in me that's like, we'll get through it. And then there's a piece of me that's like, we don't want to get through it, right? Like that's that thing where like, how do you face your fears? I think that's a big part of it for the fears that I do face is like the consequences of not doing it is I don't want to live through those. Even if I know I can get through them, like that's extra part of my life I don't want to deal with.
Right. Right. This is a tough one because I can feel myself being in college, not writing the paper and constantly saying, just think, Amy, by this time next week, the paper will be written and still not writing the paper. But I would kind of future focus myself to say, okay, imagine yourself a week from now feeling so much better that the paper is written. And then that sometimes would motivate me to do it. Or sometimes I'd just be like, yeah, professor, it's going to be late.
That's see, and I know I can fall back on that. I have some very good reasons for why it hadn't gotten done. And
Exactly.
like I had a cold, I had some other
Yep.
stuff come up. Like there's many valid reasons,
Yeah.
but I'm now at a point where it doesn't matter. It's even if I get an extension, still got to do it, right?
You
so
still
like,
have to do it.
What I admire about you, though, you've brought this up in other areas too, is your ability to trick yourself into doing things. And I don't see. So there's the Tracy that knows all the things we have to do and is like taskmaster and is like, wake up, do this thing, right? But she's not the doer. Doer Tracy. There's no internal. She's that rebel from that Four Tendencies book we talked about.
Yes.
That she does it when she's damn good and ready to do it. And it's worked for us this far.
Well, and I also feel like the doer Tracy be like, you can't trick me. I know all the tricks. So you don't even try to trick me.
I had a colleague that was like, I only watch my favorite TV show when I'm on the treadmill. If I'm not walking on my treadmill, I don't get to watch it. And that little doer Tracy is like, God, are you dumb? I can watch that show right now on my phone. I could sit in my car with some Dairy Queen and watch it. And I don't have to be in the treadmill. Don't bet. I don't have to do it. So like, but then when it comes to like this fear, like where I am right now is I have all those uncomfortable feelings we talked about. And a lot of them are fear-based. And so now the fear is stopping me, but it's also like the fear of not doing it. Like, that's what I'm screaming to myself. Like, that's really what you're avoiding is the fear of what happens if you don't do it.
Yeah. So it almost feels like this tipping point of like, the longer you wait, the more the fear builds up of what will happen if you don't do it, the more you don't want to do it. It's just like this weird thing that's happening for you, but there does have to reach some kind of tipping point where you actually do it.
Yeah. And so that's that like internal motivation piece. So when we talked about face your fears and it's like that general and it's pretending you have an army behind you, right? Like that's not real life.
No, but I will say there are now, we're not living in a Tony Robbins event. And I don't know what it is with Tony Robbins and us lately, but we've referenced him like 3 times now in 3 different episodes. But the thing with the Tony Robbins events or any events like that is that you are surrounded by a group of people who've had all this positive energy poured into them all day long. So the energy is poured into them. They radiate it out to you. You radiate it out to them. You're feeding off of everyone's energy. And then bam, you can walk over those hot coals, right? So that's a great way to face your fears, walking over hot coals. Not something you ever are going to need to do in your day-to-day life, unless you're, Indiana Jones or something.
Or at a Tony Robbins event.
Exactly. However, I would say that you can like borrow other people's courage, other people's faith. Literally, like, hey, I have a paper to write. Hey, I have a paper to write too. Let's meet at, Starbucks or whatever, and we'll write our papers together type of thing.
Oh, you nailed it. So where I'm currently at right now is like the event I'm at is where a bunch of us are commiserating about how much we procrastinate and making jokes and just letting ourselves live in this we're not going to do
Yeah.
it world. And I
Yeah.
need to cross the hallway into a different conference room filled with the if I feel better if I'll do it and I have faith that I'm going to do it and everything's going to turn out fine room. I need to get out of the self-effacing room. Right?
Yeah. We, so when I actually supervised people, there was this thing that, of course, we had to do for all of the employees and their employee review. So everybody hated doing it because you'd have to do like 10 to 16 reviews, right?
Yeah.
And everybody hated it. And my idea was literally, let's all get together and have an EPR jam and just be in the same room. No one needs to know what you're writing about other people, but you could shout out, hey, what's a good way to say this? And we would build each other's energies up and we would get it done. Like that's that group effort thing that then you don't want to let down another person, right? For not doing your portion of it. But the other,
that's an ADHD procrastination, like just get ready on the task kind of like hack is to mirror. And
yeah,
so sometimes just having someone else in the room, whether you're doing the same thing or not, but especially like this is a great example because you are doing the same thing and nobody wants to do it. Just being around other people can get you to do the thing.
yeah,
Right?
it sure can. It sure can. Now, not all fears, not all things that have to be done can be done in a group. Like, if you have to have a difficult conversation, you can't have like, hey, let's all get together and have our difficult conversations together.
Yes.
Like, that just won't work. But
you can tell someone, you can talk it out.
You could talk it out. You could literally practice it, like a literal practice. Or you could, we already talked about that other practice, like pretend to be somebody else to do it. I feel like, yeah.
Well, I think part of where my struggle for my example comes from is I already know my why of why I'm not doing it. Is
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't want it. It was stupid to do in the first place. And I didn't make that realization until it was too late to undo it. And now I have to do it anyways. Right. And
You know
so,
what? Okay. I'm
but
interrupting
so
you.
anyways, well, no, because that's not the point.
Okay.
Like, and so there are other times though, this just makes me think of there's a radio morning show and a woman wrote into their group therapy that the DJs would do and people would call in with advice, which isn't therapy, by the way. That's not advice giving. But her thing was she was married and they had not yet had physical intimacy yet, and she was terrified of it. And one of the DJs told her to just get drunk and get it over with. And so I'm going to say this. Sometimes taking advice, sometimes talking it out, sometimes forcing yourself to do it. Back to how you kind of started this show. If you don't know your why, figure out the why first, right? Like, why am I afraid of this? Why am I not doing it? Why do I have this, feel your feeling and then like what's causing that feeling kind of a thing. And then take tiny actions to resolve it.
Yes.
You don't always, like for my example, it is appropriate to just do the thing, right? Or for your performance review thing. Some things it's not appropriate because fears can be big and there are different sizes of fears, right? And different ways to tackle them.
Yeah. No, I know that one of the best things for facing your fear that we talked about before is action, but I love that you said tiny action because so often big action is that's just another fear, right? It's just harder to do it that way. Yeah. So I feel like practice, borrow someone else's
set a
courage.
timer. Like for me, set a timer. For me, just sit down for 5 minutes. See if your outline comes out. And then see if you want to stay for 5 more minutes, then maybe 10, then maybe 20, right? Like see how long you can sit with it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Well, I think we're ready. Onward.
Have courage.
Yes.
You can do hard things.
Well, you actually can do hard things. And just remember that hard things, scary things are still just things. They are just things at their smallest component. And that's something else to remember is maybe you just need to get it down to its smallest component of what it actually is. A hard conversation is still a conversation. It's just a conversation.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Paper is just pen to a blank sheet of paper. Or,
There we go.
yeah.
Well, this gave me a lot to think about. If this episode also spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.